You've been incredibly active, to switch gears here a little bit, over the years with youth and tennis, developing young players, representing the game, trying to push it further and further. With what we're seeing around the world as far as the murder of George Floyd, and so much that's going on as far as opening the eyes of others towards the plight of Black people, what has tennis done correctly, and what has tennis done wrong when it comes to diversity?
Well, I think you need to hear from those African American players a little bit more about what they went through. I mean, you hear a little bit about Venus and Serena because they're so popular and they're so worldly famous. But I immediately thought of a lot of the players I grew up playing with, Malavia Washington, Brian Shelton, Lori McNeil, Katrina Adams, hosts of African Americans that, to be honest, as a kid growing up, you never thought there were any issues, but now you kind of realize, wow, we're white people playing a predominantly white sport, and these players likely went through lots of things that we never knew about. So I think it's about James Blake, obviously a guy who played Davis Cup, who had that horrible incident with the police in New York City, where he got attacked and had done nothing wrong. So he's been out there talking about a lot of which I think is great. The one thing I think about tennis that is a little bit different in some sense is that, my twins are in ballet school, so they did an online thing for dancers, and there was some very successful African American dancers. They talked about how difficult it's been for them in that world, and that because they didn't look a certain way, they wouldn't get certain parts, or they wouldn't get chosen for this school. And my oldest daughter, we were watching it together. She said to me, "Well, I said, it's interesting, thinking about this in tennis, because we see lots of people of color in tennis, junior tennis, especially these days, which is great."
Yeah, really good.
Okay, partly because the success of Venus and Serena, but we sort of wonder, well, imagine what they had to go through. And my daughter said to me, she said, "Well, yeah, in tennis, so it's a little different because in tennis, you either win or you lose, from a performance standpoint. So it's a little different from being, say, an actor or, even applying for a job in a company. Tennis, if you're good enough, whatever your background, nobody can stop you. And that doesn't mean you haven't had to deal with a lot of issues of racism, et cetera, and prejudice. Obviously, that I think is the opportunity for tennis to hear those stories a little bit more from those people that have gone through the junior system, the college system, the professional system, and tell their stories. Because it's time for us as white people and people that have had a lot of the opportunities they haven't to listen.
Yeah, you see 16-year-old Coco Gauff and Taylor Townsend, obviously the Williams sisters. They continue to sort of shift the scene from sort of what we know as, I guess, has been sort of stereotyped as an old-fashioned kind of country club sport and become more of a face associated with the game, which you see sort of with Francis Tiafoe, who recently said he thinks that maybe participating in the U.S. Open takes away from the social message that we need out in the world right now, which we see with some of the players in the NBA. Do you expect tennis players to be protesting, taking a knee during the anthem or anything during the U.S. Open?
I'd be all for it. I think they have every right to do what they want. I love what Francis has done. He's a great young kid. I actually knew him as a kid growing up in the juniors, watched him as a 15-year-old. So I saw him develop as a kid. He's a great, he's a young man now. He's not a kid anymore. But so I think for those guys to speak up is awesome. There's no doubt in my mind that tennis players should do that. If that's what they want to do, absolutely. That's what this country is about. So I believe they will, and we'll just have to see what happens. But it's certainly they have every right to be able to be heard, and I hope they use it. I think they will.